Women today are 50% more likely to die from pregnancy than their mothers. And for every woman who dies, there are tens of thousands more who survive with severe maternal morbidity. The U.S. is one of the wealthiest nations in the world, yet we genuinely struggle with these challenges. For instance, in South Carolina, we've received an F for the past 5 consecutive years on our March of Dimes report. And Black women like me are still 3 to 4 more times likely to die from pregnancy, regardless of income or education. For many of you listening, this is not the first time you've heard the story of the U.S. maternal health crisis. And perhaps the stories you've heard in the past have led to a specific policy change recommendation or recommended change in our clinical model. And while those things are needed conversations, I want to offer a different lens today, an alternate seat in which to understand that the very solutions we're seeking after just may be laid out right in front of us. For years, birth outcomes were mere statistics to me. I was educated, informed, resourced. I believed, like so many of us do, that if you plan enough, prepare enough, achieve enough, well, you're safe. And I had no reason to believe that I would have a personal connection to those outcomes. And then I did. Now, before I share my hospital room story with you, I want to introduce you to a little girl on a porch. This is me in Greenville, North Carolina with my family. You can't tell from the picture, but I had on one flip-flop. My hair was wild, and I knew nothing of maternal morbidity statistics at the time. But I was raised in community. Neighbors, they showed up. Elders knew my name. We took bus rides to Vacation Bible School. We played hopscotch in the street, and I learned to make those scratch-made meals with my grandmother in her kitchen. When someone had a baby, well, family was there. We didn't use phrases like protective factors or social determinants of health. But what we had was a web. And webs catch people. Like a crochet needle weaving a quilt, webs are ecosystems that produce a protective barrier. They hold tightly the very health-promoting resources that combat against chronic disease. Think food, housing, transportation, income. And somewhere along our journey of excellence in healthcare, we exchanged the webs for the walls. You know, as I take you on this journey from my front porch to my hospital room, I must first say that birth was never meant to be done alone. And the little girl on the porch, she knew that. And as I got older, I came to esteem modern medicine, and I still do. I built my entire career alongside extraordinary clinicians, knowing that it takes skill, precision, and trust. And when I delivered my daughter, Lauren Kelly, 14 years ago this week, the professionals in that room did everything they could. So the story I want to share is not a story of failure. It's a story of what medicine was never designed to do alone. So my journey to motherhood was a bit unexpected. My husband and I were believing for a child for over a year, and eventually we got pregnant. Joy filled the homes of our loved ones when we shared the news. We even had a gender reveal party and learned we were having a girl. We decided to name her Lauren Kelly. But unfortunately, life can send you curveballs. And we were leaving rural South Carolina one evening after visiting family. And as we pulled up into the driveway, I experienced the most unbelievable pain in the upper right side of my belly. 5.5 months pregnant, body bent. I couldn't walk into our home without the help of my husband. The pain intensified, and I called the physician on call, and the only phrase I could use to describe what was happening was, "My stomach hurts." And her response was, "Well, that could be anything. You can come into the emergency room now or wait for your appointment in the morning." I knew if I had waited, something bad was going to happen. So my husband rushed us back to the car, rushed us to the emergency room, and that first ultrasound had a faint heartbeat for Lauren. And by the second, the same physician who said that could be anything had to tell me with tears in her eyes that Lauren was gone. She had died inside of me, and they needed to save me now. It turned out something worse would have happened if I had stayed home. By the time I reached the emergency room, my blood pressure was already 200 over 100. I could have had a stroke and died at the age of 29. The data would call me a near miss. I call it the day that I joined the ranks of those tens of thousands of birthing women each year in this country whose births leave short and long-term consequences behind. So after we lost Lauren, the hospital discharged me, but community never did. They brought the meals, they sat in silence at my feet, they still remember her name. And when I was ready to carry life again 3 times over, they steadied me. Healthy births are not mere medical events. They are community outcomes. In fact, there's a researcher from the University of South Carolina, Dr. Hong, who recently shared that 47% of rural birthing women in South Carolina bypassed their local hospitals and delivered in an urban hospital setting. And what's fascinating about this data is that of all those women that bypassed their local hospitals and delivered in this urban hospital setting, all of them were more likely to experience severe maternal morbidity than the rural women who delivered in their local hospitals. Now, as a data geek, we can have a rich conversation about why did they need to lead, both clinically and by preference, into this urban setting. But what I want you to understand is that they left their front porches, seeking after a piece of the web that seemed to be missing, only to experience the long-term consequences of severe maternal morbidity. So I challenge us and ask, are we satisfied with the current state of affairs? Or are we willing to work differently? We know today that 80% of differences in health outcomes are driven by non-medical factors. Where you live, are you supported? Is someone around to see that something isn't right? And do you have what you need to improve your health? So reclaiming America's birth story requires that we look far beyond the walls of our health institutions and to the very walls within the homes where birthing women live, to the sidewalks where their kids are playing hopscotch, and to the safe spaces where their communities convene. A few years ago, after leaving my healthcare executive role, I wanted to solve this problem on a deeper level. And I believe that technology could help us shift the needle in the right direction. So today I spend my days traveling rural South Carolina and other markets, delivering innovation to the doorsteps of these safe spaces for birthing women. And we have a simple goal as a team. We want to hand over technology to help people optimize their health, while also creating connectivity between community, systems, and houses where they rarely exist. So who told us? Who told us that innovation is married to big enterprises? I'm here to tell you that it belongs in community. And our team has developed somewhat of a new social contract in a way, not one that's come without its challenges, but our collective commitment to birthing women requires that we invest in their health as close to their safe spaces and front porches as possible. Community isn't a safe add-on to care. It's a life-saving intervention. And when I think about it, systems are bones. Community is the connective tissue. Bones without tissue can't move, can't hold, can't function. And too often we've thought of technology as the opposite of community. Screens instead of porches, apps instead of neighbors. But maybe we've been thinking about it wrong. Maybe the disconnection isn't between the screens and the porches, but the disconnection we're having in the design. Perhaps technology can extend and even fortify that connective tissue, blending the webs of our communities through the very walls of our health institutions. Maybe it can connect the mother to everyone who's concerned about her, from her obstetrician to the neighborhood nurse next door. And maybe it can connect her to help at 2 a.m. when the house is still. Too often when we think about saving moms and babies, we talk about the access, the infrastructure, and the protocols. And all those things are needed. But equitable change is rarely the result of a single intervention. It is the result of connection. And in my hospital room, physicians, they intervened in a moment of crisis. But outside of those walls, community prevented the next one. And my web is wide and long, consisting of an obstetrician, gynecologist, a cardiologist, a therapist, pastors, my family friends, all with my faith at the core. So the future of maternal health isn't choosing between our health institutions or community, but building a care model where they never have to stand apart. If we are willing to work differently, not only will we improve the health outcomes of women in this country, but we will reclaim America's birth story, because lives are saved in relationship. Thank you so much.